So these are the principles that represented the concept and the goddess Ma'at. And that's the sister with the feather of truth. See if I can draw her real quickly here. That has the Ankh on her lap and the feather of truth on her head. This is the goddess Ma'at. Ma'at meant law and order. This is where we get the term mathematics from. The Greeks said mathematics is that which is learned. But because the Caucasian race has a calcified pineal gland, and when I say calcified, I mean a pineal gland that is filled with limestone deposits, calcium deposits, hardened deposits. Because they have a calcified pineal gland, they were not complete in their explanation. They said that mathematics is that which is learned. They were half correct. What they meant was it was that which they learned from their professors, from the priest, or from the carry head. But when we take it back to its root, mathematics comes from the word ma'at, which meant truth. When you solve an equation, if it's correct, it's going to be truthful. And of course, it deals with justice and order, balance. An algebra equation has got to be balanced, and of course it has to be accurate. So all of these words emanate from the goddess Ma'at. Okay. Now, let's go into the next topic, and that is, and I'll get back to some details about the pineal eye. But let's get into the next topic because I want to cover as much of this as possible, and that is melatonin. The pineal, I mentioned that the pineal eye secretes this hormone, melatonin, at night. And it secretes serotonin during the daylight hours. And again, the things that help to enable the pineal gland to do its job is light. This is the major force that impinges on this inner eye, light. The pineal eye is really controlled by the light of the sun. Also, temperature. Next is the food that we eat. For those that work on a midnight shift where they don't get very much sunlight, it's critically important that they eat green, raw vegetables. Because in the green, raw vegetables, you have chlorophyll. And chlorophyll is melanin in the plant kingdom. Our melanin is black and brown, but the melanin of the plant kingdom is called chlorophyll. They do basically the same thing. Okay? So now, we're talking about serotonin. This is the daylight hormone. And I'll abbreviate hormone. Okay? Now, what does this do and why is it important? Serotonin begins to be secreted in the system as soon as the eyes, as soon as that inner eye senses that there's sunlight or there's the dawn. So with the morning sun, we get the secretion of serotonin in the bloodstream. Now, serotonin or serotonin gives us energy, gives us an abundance of energy. It helps us to repress or forget things that are very painful so that we can go on and work. Now, if we didn't get serotonin during the day, we would be awash in things that make us angry, things that make us upset. So I guess the Creator knew what to put in our bloodstream during the day. So the serotonin gives us energy, and it helps us to repress things that are painful. It geeks us up so that we can go on to live. Okay? Now, let's look at the hormone melatonin, which is most important. This hormone is being researched today, 24 hours a day, in colleges and universities and institutes. But if we look at this hormone called melatonin and some information about this hormone, we know that melatonin is produced in abundance in people of color. of African descent. Now this is the nighttime hormone. This is produced at night. Okay. It is produced in abundance in people of color because our pineal eye is not calcified. Our pineal eye is fluid and is functioning. The pineal eye of Caucasians half functions because it's calcified. They do not get very much melatonin. This is why their scientists are doing so much research on it today, because they're trying to find out how can we get this hormone that black people produce in abundance. Now, some of us don't get a lot of it if we don't get to sleep during the nighttime hours. You know, if you stay up after 12 o'clock at night, you don't get a whole lot of melatonin, but you still get more melatonin than the melatonin of Caucasians whose pineal eye is calcified. So it's secreted directly by that inner eye that is not calcified and that functions adequately. The pineal eye of people of color functions adequately. And this comes from information from, let's say, The African Origin of Biological Science. This is a book by Richard King. Okay. It's also discussed in the pineal gland and melatonin. This is a little pamphlet that I put out in 1991. In 1988, I began to do research on, and it should be melatonin. I began to do research on melatonin, and much of the information that I found, excuse me, much of the information that I found was in medical journals, very technical medical journals. So I found that I had to take all of these 15-letter words that were in medical terms and put it in lay people's terms so that everyday people could understand. And this is where I found out, when I started looking at the science journals, this is where I found out that people of color produced melatonin in abundance, and whites didn't. So they had to get their melatonin through artificial means. They have to get their melatonin through a pill, like this, okay? But this is produced in our system at night in abundance. Now, let's take a look at what the melatonin does.
Excuse me, how can they produce that in a pill? I don't understand.
How do they produce it?
Yeah, how do they produce it commercially? Where do they get the melatonin?
That's a good question. It is natural tissue. Melatonin is tissue that comes from the inner eye. Some people.
They're taking it from black people. They're actually killing black people and taking the gland, the hypothalamus and the gland and grinding it up, just killing black people and just put it in pill form and taking it and ingesting it themselves.
Yeah, some people theorize that, exactly.
Well, where else would they get from?
Well, I guess they could make it because they know the components. They know that melatonin is made up of, and I really didn't, that's the next subject when I get to melanin. But they know the components of melatonin, so if they know the components, they can reproduce it synthetically. But that's not to say I'm sure that they're getting some of that from black people, from cadavers, dead folks, okay? What's your question, brother?
I was going to say that I heard the brother Bobby say it, he said that they tried to produce it artificially in laboratories, but the melatonin they have doesn't have memory, so
okay.
Work with that, so
Okay.
They actually killing black people to get it.
Okay, now that leads me into this topic. What does the melatonin do? What is the function of melatonin? The brother mentioned the first function, that is, it boosts our memory. It helps us to remember things. It is actually responsible responsible for dream sleep, and they call it rapid eye movement sleep. So we say responsible for dream sleep. And a lot of times, this is where we get the solutions to some of our problems in the dreams. Okay, we all know